I think it's important these days to have this word in our daily lives, being learners, gaining understanding. And in this way, I think our lives will be better, and optimism will grow on how to care for our planet.
BNP Paribas Personal Finance invites you to discover On the Way, the podcast that explores the paths to responsible consumption. Whether entrepreneur, people from the world of business or researchers, On the Way gives a voice to those who day after day are helping to develop more sustainable consumption. Welcome, and I hope you enjoy listening.
Hello, On the Way. My name is Valérie Durandy, and I'm product director at Découvertes. I've had a career that I've been building for some time now, as I'm over 50. And what I wanted to share with you, of great importance to me, is how I've managed to reconcile my personal priorities, as my husband and I have 4 children, with a professional career that I've been building little by little, and where I'm now product director. It's fantastic. So I'm passionate about retail and business. I spent my whole career at department stores, Printemps, then Franck & Fils, followed by 12 years at Le Bon Marché, which was a major step in my career, as Le Bon Marché was in the middle of implementing a new strategy at the time. That was about a particular semantics for department stores, which essentially meant that we were transforming the department store. It was led by a truly visionary person, Philippe de Beauvoir, and I worked as a buyer for 12 years, and what was rather extraordinary for me was that he had this initiative, saying that we were going to combine 2 professions, those of buyer and designer. And so for 12 years, I was able to develop my creative side, working with designers and developing an eye for products, which was quite exclusive to the teams I was working with at Le Bon Marché, which was a real asset for my career, as I was headhunted to move to Monoprix, which is another major chain that people at BNP probably know. And that's also really interesting and very close to its customers. And there, I managed all the interior decor teams, and the challenge was to premiumize their product range. And back then I was lacking in the digital aspect. As in our line of work, digitalization is pretty complex in retail. And I realized that if I wasn't at a pure player, it was going to be difficult. So I made the decision to move to a pure player called Westwing, which is a German private sales site. And there, I really plunged into a variety of areas, which of course included the digital aspect, KPIs, that I picked up very enthusiastically and energetically. And I learned how to manage young people. Everyone was under 27, so I was probably a bit of a mother, aunt figure for everyone there. And that was quite special for me, because suddenly, that was an asset. I think when you're over 50, you have that agility, that understanding, and also the motivation to mix generations and management. And so that was rather nice. But after 3 years, I realized that the fast fashion aspect wasn't sustainable. I had quite a lot of trouble with the private sales business model. And that really sparked an ecological consciousness in me. And maybe the word's a bit too strong, but an engagement. And I realized that a shift from this society of permanent consumption was necessary, and I very quickly decided that I needed to go back to a business model that suited me better. Digital. So, moving to Nature et Découvertes was a great opportunity. I was at Westwing for 3 years, and then quickly I moved to Nature et Découvertes, and that was an achievement. I was coming to a brand that's been extremely engaged since its beginnings, so I felt much more aligned, first of all, with my passion for retail, for phygital, and working for a brand that's been really engaged since its creation. And so I'm much more in harmony with my beliefs and my values. The story of Nature et Découvertes is really quite inspiring. It's a family company that's 30 years old. It was created by a couple, François and Françoise Le Marchand, who are also really visionary. François and Françoise have 4 children. And just over 30 years ago, on a trip to the US, they discovered a concept called the Nature Company, which was an American concept. And they imported the concept to France with a strong conviction from the beginning of the aspect of knowing about nature so as to better protect it. And so the whole idea of the company is to teach us all about nature, biodiversity, environmental issues, and understanding how our planet works, understanding the challenges of life. And this was all 30 years ago. People have been talking about it a lot since the recent pandemic, but this was 30 years ago. So it was really extraordinary, as I arrived as a newbie, I must say, and rather humble in my managerial stance. And I found extremely engaged teams there with strong convictions and really loyal teams. There's relatively little turnover at this company, as there's a true sense of having a mission. And so, for example, Nature et Découvertes did its first CSR report in 1994, called Arc-en-Ciel, or Rainbow, which is a nice name. And CSR reporting at Nature et Découvertes is long established and has been an annual event since 1994. So it's deeply rooted and authentic. And there was also the establishment of the foundation very early on in the history of Nature et Découvertes. And what really amazed me when I arrived at the company was the commitment of the teams. Every employee is an actor. And so, for example, I was very surprised by the teams when I arrived. I met ornithologists in the stores. I met naturopaths. I was really surprised. So as I'm quite expressive, people said, "But you're surprised?" And I said, "Yes, I was really surprised. Stores have salespeople. Do you have salespeople?" At Nature et Découvertes, there's alternative expertise, a new and rather disruptive form of expertise. It's been like that right from the start of the company's history. So at Nature et Découvertes, we have over 100 stores. We have a highly varied set of product categories. It ranges from well-being to the outdoors, lithotherapy, scents, hammocks, and decoration. In short, a lot of product offerings. And this variety of products, of offerings, is constructed by experts at our company. And so when I arrived, I was surprised to see such a shared sense of pride and belonging among all of our employees. That's not always the case everywhere. At Le Bon Marché, I was lucky enough to feel a real sense of pride and belonging. And it's the same at Nature et Découvertes, because it really means something. Our company has B Corp certification, and we're on our third certification, so this isn't something new for us. Still, it's more and more complex, more and more demanding. It's one of the most demanding certifications for the profession. François Lemarchand was the one who wanted to get this certification, which was originally American, and is now growing widespread in France. And that also goes for us. It makes a lot of sense, as B Corp certification ranges from governance to employees to warehouses. It covers all parts of the company, so you can't cheat. There's no cheating. And at a certain point, it's more and more demanding because the stakes are getting higher and higher. But it also engages us. It draws us right into the action. It's not all talk. It's action. It's facts. And we have to demonstrate what we're doing. So I think that's really significant and inspiring and motivating for our teams. In the world of products, it's a major challenge today since, as you know, there's a lot of information that's now transparent, and that's a really good thing in terms of traceability, and above all, impact. We've been calculating our carbon footprint for a very long time, but we were doing it on what's called scopes 1 and 2. We weren't doing it on scope 3, meaning products and customer travel. Today, we're calculating our carbon footprint. I'm going to explain how this got started, as I think it's interesting. It's a story that has some meaning. During the first lockdown, so March 2020, at Nature et Découvertes, we closed all of our stores. And we really had, as I think everybody did, a pretty dramatic dimension to our internal discussions at Nature et Découvertes. As we were already quite knowledgeable about environmental issues, I think we can say. But then with the pandemic, things accelerated sharply. Since 2000, there's been a social engagement division at Nature et Découvertes that reports to general management. Then after that, there's my commercial product division. So we decided in May, so just after the first lockdown, to place the environmental engagement aspect at the heart of the business. And that was when we created what we call the Sustainable Innovation Unit, whose primary role is to accelerate the transformation of our offering. So that means that it comes under my responsibility, that it's at the heart of my job. It's not something separate. And I think this is more effective for mobilizing the teams, and things go much faster. In this sense, our Sustainable Innovation Unit has 3 main fields of work: circularity, sustainability, and reducing our impact. And that was created in June 2020. So the issue is that we produce a certain amount of products, and 65% of our offering comes under the Nature et Découvertes brand, and so they're exclusive. And we still have a lot of possible areas for action for reducing our impact. So in 2021, we calculated our carbon footprint with Carbon 4, which is a well-established and now well-known company founded by someone I'm sure you know, who has a deep understanding of the subject. And so with Carbon 4, we created a tracking tool for product managers, which they now always use in determining product referencing. The aim is to reduce the impact of our offering and transform it by occasionally getting rid of products that have too heavy an impact compared to other products with less impact. So our tools are very clear and clearly identified. I think that now the experts understand them well. This, of course, means making maximum use of recycled materials. There are products where this reduces its carbon footprint by a factor of 4, so that's extremely effective. Then there's the sourcing, which isn't always easy, but it's also very effective. And then you can look to the weight of products. If a product is lighter, then it potentially uses fewer materials, and more energy and materials are saved. It's not quick work, but I think it's work that needs day-to-day support from management. You have to accept having a fairly humble posture too, and remind yourself that it's about taking things in small but conscious steps. And you need a lot of determination. And also the determination to spread the word. I think it's important to explain to our suppliers, to our partners, why we're doing all this, where it's leading us, and why it's so significant in shifting the needle. And that we're a partnership. We're like a bracelet, where every link in the chain is connected to the next. And I think that's what will reduce our impact, and what will help us to maintain our commercial activities. Because as we're B Corp certified, we want to reduce our impact and protect the planet. But we're not ashamed of the fact that we're an employer, and so we generate a level of activity that allows us to remain an employer. It's all done with a lot of coherence, and this is what's so significant at Nature et Découvertes. It's also done with a level of humility. So it's true that in getting a product policy moving, a difficulty has come about in that currently we don't have much of a voice at Nature et Découvertes. Ultimately, we're a rather discreet brand. We don't advertise and never have. And these days we're surrounded by actors who are speaking very loudly and clearly. If you don't know what you're doing, you might end up thinking, I'm not really sure about this brand's level of environmental engagement. But now, Nature et Découvertes is getting involved. We're talking about everything we do in a simple way, and so customers know what they're buying, how it was designed, and why it makes more sense to buy from Nature et Découvertes than from somewhere else. So when we did the carbon impact tracking for all our Nature et Découvertes product lines, I asked the product manager to identify products, our best sellers, because they're the ones we can have the most impact with, of course. We could very quickly modify them to reduce their carbon footprints. So in fact, we identified the 2 examples that I can talk about here that are interesting and illustrate the aim nicely. The first is a product for infants, for children under 3, the Turtle Nightlight. And with this Turtle Nightlight, there's a lot of plastic. That's the way it is, since for infants, plastic is one of the most durable materials. That also makes sense. But it still has a pretty big carbon footprint, as you can imagine. So the product manager worked on several different areas. The first was using recycled plastic. So rather than using plastic manufactured for the product, we used recycled plastic. Then he reduced the weight of the product, so the product is lighter. And then, perhaps it's a detail, but we got rid of the plastic fasteners that connected each element. And so that gave us a really satisfactory result, as we reduced the impact of the product by 76%, and he's quite proud of it. And I think he should be. It's a great result. And then there's another example that's totally different, which is a blanket. At Nature et Découvertes, we have a best-selling product, which is a polyester blanket. 2 years earlier, the product manager had already replaced the new plastic with recycled plastic. So that was already done. We couldn't use that again. But we came up with the idea of selling it in a vacuum pack. So putting it in a vacuum pack and selling it compressed under vacuum. That way it takes up less space in containers and in stores. And on top of that, we could tell customers it's a 2-for-1, since the vacuum pack can be reused for something else. So that's another success for a product that had already reduced its carbon footprint. Of course, there are loads of examples, as we have lots of products at Nature et Découvertes, but those 2 are some of our bestsellers and the most interesting to actually talk about. Additionally, at Nature et Découvertes, a long time ago, we made the choice to significantly reduce importing products by plane. Shipping obviously has a very significant impact on our carbon footprint, but something that really interested and even surprised me in our work with Carbon 4 is that shipping only accounts for 7% of the carbon footprint of our products, so our Scope 3 footprint. So it's very low. Why is it 7% for Nature et Découvertes? I don't know how much it is for our competitors, but for a long time now, Less than 1% of our imports from outside the European Union are shipped by plane. That's very low, because in retail, shipment is often by air, and that has a really big carbon footprint, very significant. I think consumers today have a lot of preconceptions or misconceptions, and there are also ideas that turn out to be not so good. But there are preconceptions that aren't true, and shipping is one of them. Everyone says that manufacturing in Asia makes shipping a big issue. Of course, I'm not saying that container ships don't have a carbon impact. And then if you go into details, there's the weight of the container ship and its fuel, the duration of the trip, and so on. But that's a misconception. It's actually only 7% of the carbon footprint. Production and materials are what have the most significant impact, in fact. And production is a really crucial area. And it's also about the energy the factory uses. Is it coal-powered? Does it use another energy source? And how is the electricity produced? That's the real issue. Coal is a major issue. It's a major issue in our neighbor Germany. And it's also a major issue in Asia. At Nature Découvertes, we have a broad range of products, and we always want to have more. But the work we did with the Carbon 4 teams had a big impact on us, as we became aware of product carbon footprints that we hadn't imagined. We had absolutely no idea. And since the approach is completely scientific, there's no discussion, there's no debate. So obviously, the problem is that the carbon footprint for electrical products is the most serious, the most important. And it led us to get rid of certain products, even though they accounted for a significant portion of our sales. I'm not able to share all the details, but we got rid of certain products. It wasn't an easy choice. When we can't transform a product, we have to stop production right away and tell our customers, go buy it secondhand, as there are plenty on the market already. So buy it secondhand. You can easily find it on secondhand platforms. At Nature Découvertes, this is of concern to us. Well, not concern, actually. This is our goal, to share and explain to our customers why a product is or isn't available in stores. So at Nature Découvertes, it's interesting to note that we don't actually use the term salespeople. Instead, we say advice guides, like mountain guides, because we want to share our achievements and our knowledge with the customers. And I think that through the conversations between our customers and our advice guides, customers who visit Nature Découvertes learn something. Wow, I went to Nature Découvertes. There was a Tibetan bowl and a telescope for looking at the sky. Hey, I found out that there's a comet passing by on February 1st. That's incredible. On the night of February 1st, you have to look at the sky because there's a comet passing. So for us, raising customer awareness means in-store conversations. And then, of course, on the web and social networks, there are all the things that can be shared in a context of learning. I think it's important these days to have this word in our daily lives, being learners, gaining understanding. And in this way, I think our lives will be better, and optimism will grow on how to care for our planet, that's for sure. We also have this strong belief about living these well-equipped lives. We're surrounded by objects. Our homes are full of objects. And one of our beliefs is that in the future, it'll be a lot less about having things, having objects, and more about being. And when I say being, I mean wanting to paddle down the Loire River in a kayak and camp out every night. So we're going to offer that at Nature Découvertes in 2023-2024. We're going to set up a services platform. We'll offer our customers nature trips, which we've already been selling for a long time in our stores. We'll offer them a weekend kayaking down the Loire or discovering the Baie de Somme and all the wonderful birds there are to observe there. And we think it's through these explanations to customers that once you've got your own binoculars, you can go bird watching all over France. And if you don't know where to go bird watching, Nature Découvertes can guide you. So I think that these days, we play a major role in supporting consumers. And an informational role, informing, sharing, being generous, and being transparent in 1,000 different ways. And there, I think we have a lot of scope for improvement. But we really want to remain generous and to have that dimension of being part of a collective group. Because these days the collective is key. All these third places that are opening up, it's pretty extraordinary to see what's happening. Sure, it's a low-key trend for now. Not everybody knows what a third place is, not everybody knows what you'll find there, and there aren't any salespeople in them talking to you. Because in third places, nothing is sold. Instead, people share what they've learned, they talk about issues. It's that collective aspect. We've really gained a lot of faith from seeing this happening. Everyone has their own role to play today. It's powerful. So in terms of this work we're doing on our products, on materials used, and why we choose these materials, our major challenge now is to better communicate about it. I think that this is a weak point. A weak point in that we're probably not being very pedagogic about our products. We're very talkative about products. We say a lot of things about a given product. But I have my teams, and at some point, you have to literally draw people a picture. Let's be strong about how we express it. 76% less carbon is really a lot. So that's the work we're undertaking now in our stores. It's not visible enough. We depend a lot on our teams to convey this information. But I think it's not clear enough yet. As a test, in one store we've set up large panels explaining to customers everything we've done. The role of the foundation, the calculation of our carbon footprint. We're working on the whole educational aspect so that customers think, before I discover a product at Nature et Découvertes, it was fun and I was happy to learn and discover. And now I understand why they altered the product I really liked. And maybe it's a different color from a couple years back. So, giving meaning to the actions we undertake and explaining them clearly in terms of our products. I think that in that respect, we've still got a bit of progress to make. So that's our challenge this year for 2023. But we even have a plan for up to 2025. The major challenge is conveying everything we're doing. It's about doing and conveying this to people. Ultimately, Nature et Découvertes is a brand that's rather talkative. And this is also what our customers like. We always have plenty to tell about. But now I say to my teams, we have to get to the essentials. We have to be educational. And this will also give our customers better understanding. So this is really a major project. And our other major project is putting the user, the customer, back at the heart of our range of offerings. Currently at Nature et Découvertes, we've got multiple customer profiles. We focus on families, we focus on children, we focus on senior citizens. But we've realized that 18 to 30-year-olds are coming in a lot less often than before. And these same 18 to 30-year-olds should be attuned to the work we're doing, as it's a generation that's very socially engaged. So the big decision we made to address this paradox is to become more user-centric than we were in the past. And also to work with experts we pinpointed. I call them doer conveyors, who are completely aligned with their convictions in their day-to-day lives. So for example, an adventurer, and I mean a real adventurer, when you see what he's doing on Instagram, he'll say he's been hiking in the Larzac region. And originally, he had had the idea of eating plants he found along the way, but after 4 days of plants, he can't take it anymore. And so he says on Instagram, I'm tired of boiling my plants every night. How will I last for another 3 days? But this anecdote shows that today, influence is positive and it's interesting. But at Nature et Découvertes, influence isn't what drives us. What drives us is making our customers aware of people who are actors, who are truly doers, who relay positive messages, and will help us live in better harmony with the planet. And also help us know it better, and not putting yourself under massive pressure because you think you're not reducing your eco-impact, and not getting depressed either. So that's one of our major projects, and we're going to have to communicate well. And we've also been doing a lot of work on modifying the customer journey. This is a really important project. Currently, our stores have a rich product offering, but customers often say, I don't quite understand. The stores aren't always very decipherable. They're sort of like Alibaba's cave, so we also need to work on making them clearer. And so we're also focusing on the customer journey. All of this made 2022 a really rich year. I find that times of crisis are a great opportunity for coming up with new initiatives. So I'm a pretty optimistic person. I think the pandemic has sparked a lot of creativity. And in 2022, at Nature et Découvertes, we tested out secondhand products. And so we conducted 2 POCs, one in July and one in November. Very modest trials and quite under the radar, as we needed to see the outcome in terms of customer journey. The goal is to roll this out in 2023. But to sell secondhand items, you need to have enough secondhand products to sell. And that's where there's a bit of a problem. You need to build up your stock, bearing in mind that for the moment, we're doing it in B2C mode, not B2B or C2C. We chose B2C because this is what we do best in terms of channel. And so, for several years now at Nature et Découvertes, we've been holding a springboard event. We do this springboard event once a year. We have a call for applications, often from young startups. But the people presenting the startups aren't necessarily young, I'd like to point out, which is an interesting concept. Just because it's a startup doesn't mean it has to be someone under 30. And for example, we had someone over 50 who was launching a rather extraordinary project, a prototype for breathing in line with cardiac coherence. But anyway, the Springboard event. The idea is to bring in people who have created products that are good for well-being, for nature, for everyday life, for families, for any number of things. So we do that once a year. Startups bring their pitches to Découvertes, and there's a jury made up of different people with different levels of responsibility and with different sensibilities. And this is important to us because in the selection criteria, the environmental impact is present right from the initial conception, and this has long been the case. So if we get applications for products that aren't in line with the environmental commitment of the Découvertes grant, we don't consider them, even if the idea is great. So the Springboard is a wonderful event. It really energizes us because we're in a room with mostly entrepreneurs. It's quite powerful. And it calls us into question. It challenges us to understand exactly what the creator has brought in to show us. For example, hydroponics. I had no idea what hydroponics was. We didn't know how it worked. So someone came to us with an aquarium and explained hydroponics to us. And for a half an hour, I had to really concentrate to understand how it worked. And it's fantastic. It's like permaculture. It's one of those subjects that comes back time and again. There's an aspect to these proposals that I call archaeological innovation, meaning seeking out practices from the pre-war era, which were quite low impact. It's like the idea of using charcoal to clean your water. There are lots of examples. When you're at scout camp and there's no toothpaste, you use charcoal. It's not so glamorous, but it's effective. So there's this Springboard event, and for the people taking part, it challenges them intellectually, and it also calls things into question, strong convictions, and you think, oh really? I didn't know that? Oh really? The moon? Are you sure? That's what observing the moon is like? Well, yes, that's how it is. Where do you get your data? Is it sound? So scientifically verifying when there's an issue, making sure it's a reliable source. This then allows us to support the product launch. And sometimes prototypes are made, and we've told the creators, Découvertes can help you with the product development and getting it on the market. We really make our know-how and sales available to them. And then, of course, we let the entrepreneur take flight, as we don't have a volume of business that would allow us to keep them exclusively for more than a year. So there have been some great stories. There's the story of one product I'll share with you, about Looney, the storyteller or storybox. I think the parents out there will know it. It's a wonderful story. It all started with the Découvertes teams. It's great because in our toys and games range, we really want to offer solutions for parents not to put their kids in front of screens. As Boris Cyrulnik says, it's a tragedy. Putting a 6-year-old child in front of a screen is a tragedy. They don't look at their mothers. They don't see the little expression on her face when she says, no, 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 when she's not happy. In terms of emotions and learning, it's extremely worrying. And in fact, he says we'll only realize it in 20 years. So for us, it's vital to offer solutions where children don't sit in front of screens. And kids, instead of watching a cartoon, they listen to a story, and it captivates them. Because, of course, the storytelling is great, and straight away, the Découvertes team said, this is brilliant. It's a brilliant idea. So there was something just brilliant at our latest Springboard event, which took place in October. I realize that more and more, it goes without saying that environmental issues are a major theme in innovations today. We've had applications where it's a prerequisite, and this is something new. It's new because before the pandemic, it wasn't necessarily the case. But now, finally in 2022, it is. And I think it's great. I thought to myself, that's it, the world's really changing. So it's just amazing. I'll give you an example. 2 young women from Brittany came in, 2 brilliant chemists. It still makes me smile. They came to present us with a solid nail polish remover. Nail polish remover is a disaster. It's a disaster in terms of materials, and it's also a disaster because you put it on your nails. I'm not saying that nail polish is virtuous, but there are more and more vegan nail polishes. But they had an idea. We're going to make a solid nail polish remover. They completely eco-designed the remover to have minimum environmental impact. It's great. It's brilliant. So in fact, today, the discussions we've been having internally at Découvertes for over 10 years are really spreading everywhere, I think. It's not a rumor anymore. It's just reality. And so, when you go to trade shows, even the suppliers are now telling us more and more, You know, I told another customer about what we'd done with you on impact reduction. It's great. So at the beginning, some product managers would say, but Valérie, maybe we shouldn't say too much about what we're doing. And I'd say, but yes, if we want to transform, if we want to support the transformation, then of course we have to be open source. So that's also a new way of working, but it's a positive one. And that's how we'll be able to reduce our overall impact. So it's important that our customers, and even beyond our customers, the entire population, understand the issues and understand how they have a major role to play. And something I find very positive is that I think that almost everybody knows what the IPCC is. And that wasn't the case 3 years ago. Something that's very positive is holding climate fresque workshops. And we've done this internally at Nature et Découvertes. I got training on this a while back, because now I also do it on a personal basis. And we're also going to try, I think it's a bit tricky, but we would like to invite our customers to discover our climate fresque workshops. At Nature et Découvertes, we're making stores into venues for these climate workshops, and spreading the word that it's not all that complicated, and it's accessible to all. So that's a major issue, and one that our customers need to understand. You need to find the right tone. Make it simple, make it accessible. But there's a major challenge, which is communicating better. Because Nature et Découvertes is a company that's been involved in this subject right from the start. And we know this because we've done customer surveys. And people ask, why don't you speak more loudly and more frequently about it? It wasn't in our culture, it's not our culture. But I think we're going to emphasize this more, because we're entirely legitimate. Obviously, there's always that fear of being viewed as greenwashing. We're always a bit afraid of being accused of that. But for all that, I think our customers need to understand. I think that's the major issue. Making people understand, explaining. It's about pedagogy, and a great deal of it. So in my day-to-day life, since I've been at Nature et Découvertes, I've changed a lot of things, because I've understood a lot of things. That's been really positive. And so, I've been spreading the word all around me for the last 4 years. And this is really accentuated since the pandemic. I've actually reduced my consumption quite a bit. And this is as someone coming from the retail sector, very consumer-oriented. In fact, when you work in retail, you're always tempted, because you see all the new products before customers do. So you get a bit impatient. Now, I always look at secondhand sites before buying new clothing, whether for me or for my children. Another thing that's new, and that had actually started before the pandemic, is that for all foods, for groceries, fruits and vegetables, I look at their place of origin, and I don't buy what's not in season. That's quite new for me. It's something recent. And as there are between 5 and 6 of us at home, it's a fair amount of produce. So these are my little baby steps. There you go. What I really wanted to share with you, ultimately, is that I think we're at a pivotal moment, which is exciting, really exciting, and that it's important to support our teams on a daily basis, although it's not always easy. What I mean is that I'm doing my best as a scout. You know scouts. They always promise to do their best. That's what Baden-Powell said. And I also do my best to contribute with humility, like Pierre Rabhi's little hummingbird.
You can find all the episodes of On the Way on your favorite podcast platforms and on the personal-finance.BNP Paribas website. Any links or references made by guests can be found in the introductory text of each episode. And if you'd like to take to our microphone and tell us your story, please contact nicolas.meunier@bnpparibas.com. See you very soon!